Genesis Principle #8, Moral Purity, uses Genesis 4:17-19 to show how quickly humanity moves away from God's original one-flesh design, and why staying within that design is essential for living in God's will. The contrast is between Genesis 2:24's one-flesh marriage and Lamech's polygamy, which pictures moral drift and rebellion. What happens in Genesis 4:17-19? Genesis 4 traces Cain's line after he has murdered Abel and moved away from the Lord's presence. In verses 17-19, Scripture records the development of city life and culture, then focuses on Lamech, who took 2 wives, Adah and Zillah, introducing polygamy into the biblical story. Lamech's life is marked by violence and pride. Later in the same passage, he boasts of killing a man. So his polygamy is part of a larger pattern of ignoring God's ways. The text doesn't condemn him in a long speech. Instead, it shows his choices as symptoms of a corrupted heart and growing social decay. How does this contrast with the one-flesh pattern God's original blueprint is in Genesis 2:24? One man, one woman, joined as one flesh. That pattern involves exclusivity, one husband, one wife, not multiple spouses at once. Unity, profound physical, emotional, and spiritual oneness, not divided loyalty and fractured intimacy. Covenant, a God-centered commitment, not a self-centered arrangement of convenience. Lamech's 2 wives break that pattern by splitting the one-flesh bond across multiple partners. Rather than a single, mutually self-giving union, his relationships model possession and division, which historically leads to jealousy, favoritism, and relational pain. Why does this become a moral purity principle? Principle #8 observes that once marriage departs from God's pattern, sexual and relational compromise quickly multiplies. In other words, polygamy in Genesis 4 is not random. It emerges in a line already marked by wandering from God, and it helps normalize treating God's design as optional. From that, the principle is framed positively. To live in God's will, protect the one-flesh union rather than stretching or breaking it through extra partners, affairs, or casual sexual relationships. Moral purity is not just about avoiding bad acts. It is about preserving the integrity of the God-given marriage bond so it reflects His character and purposes. Implications for relationships today. Applied today, this principle calls believers to enter marriage with a one-flesh mindset. Sexual intimacy, emotional vulnerability, and covenant commitment are reserved for the spouse, not shared widely or lightly. Reject cultural distortions. Even if culture normalizes serial partners, open relationships, or pornography, Scripture treats those patterns like Lamech's, outside God's design, destabilizing the one-flesh bond. Pursue faithfulness and restoration. Where there has been sexual sin or brokenness, God still offers forgiveness and a path back toward purity and covenant faithfulness, rather than staying in patterns that mirror Cain's and Lamech's line. So, Principle #8 is using Genesis 4:17-19 as a narrative warning sign and Genesis 2:24 as the positive blueprint. Absolute alignment with God's will includes honoring marriage as a single, exclusive, one-flesh relationship and guarding it with moral purity.